Call this meeting to order. If everyone will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and for our prayer by Pastor Ernst. Pastor Ernst, please.
Thank you for this privilege. Appreciate that. Father God, we thank you for the beautiful day that you've given us here in Arizona and in Mojave County. Thank you, Lord, for this great state and this great nation. Thank you for the word of God that says that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We do pray your blessing today upon these that lead us. We pray for Buster Johnson, our chairman, Gene Bishop, Ron Gould, Hildy Angus, and Travis Lingenfelter. Thank you for those that protect us, our sheriff and sheriff's department. Thank you for the many, many men and women that make living in Mojave County such a blessing. So, Father, we pray that you give them wisdom today and help them as they deliberate, because, Lord, it will affect ultimately all that live here. Thank you for them. We pray your blessing now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to call for an executive session to be held July 6, 2021 at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Committee and legislative report. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you very much, Chairman Johnson. So there's been very kind of little activity that we're aware of, just by sort of rumor and innuendo about what's going on down in Phoenix. Hopefully, I'm hearing that the budget will be signed, sealed, delivered this week, but hey, you never know. They're making some last-minute changes that will probably affect us, such as the rate for commercial tax, and that came out of the blue. There's just a lot going on. We have the flat tax, the flat income tax, and that's been a bone of contention down there. And so there's still negotiations and backroom deals to be made. So when we know for sure, we'll give a full report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended a few meetings since the last Board of Supervisors meeting, including the chloride meeting on the town site properties. We held our first Board of Health meeting since the COVID pandemic. NAFTA had a beautiful grand opening for their new station that I was proud to attend. And then Supervisor Lingenfelter and I held a joint town hall on the proposed budget. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. None today.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of going up to Colorado City. They held their first ever airport fly-in event. They had about over 1,000 people at the busiest, over 30 planes at the busiest, tied down from all over. I think the farthest was maybe Mississippi. That's what I heard. But just want to give them a mention and congratulations on that event yesterday. We also have several things on the waterfront. As everybody knows, Representative Cobb's bills that we've been tracking are dead right now. As soon as the session is over, her water study committee, which I'm a member of, is going to be starting up. We're going to be discussing those bills and many other things. We also have a really in-depth update on all of our water policy and legislative efforts, item 37 today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Johnson, I'm so sorry. I left something out.
Supervisor Angus.
Okay. When I first became a supervisor, I had an idea about improving employee wellness. I never dreamed it would blossom into all it has become. It started in 2014 with a program to help employees to eat better and exercise. Now, 7 years later, we will be receiving a gold award from Healthy Arizona Worksites Program. Congratulations to Mojave County. Human Resources, along with many volunteers along the way, have made this into a great program. For those who don't know, there are many wellness checks throughout the year given on-site and free of charge to employees that have health insurance through the county. They usually offer mammogram, that's mom, and prostate test, POPs, healthy heart blood draws, skin cancer check, and an ultrasound on some of the most vital organs. This enables all of you to get what these well checks done without leaving work. Another healthy addition is the walking challenges that happen about 3 times a year, and the competition is tough, so I'm told. I just wanted to thank all the employees, past and present, who have devoted their time to the Wellness Committee. I know it is hard to get people to volunteer their time away from their job. Here are the current Wellness Committee members: Amanda Simmons from Probation, Carol Roy from Public Works, Sean Williams at the Sheriff's Department, Jade Hanga, HR, Leanne Lewis, HR, Steve Cromer, IT, Teeny Sweeney Branager, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, Justice Court, Valerie Winters, Superior Court, Sylvia Ogata, IT, Stephen Huft, Community Health Education Specialist, Karen Flanagan, my assistant, Falana Huber, IT, Dottie Exler, Probation, Lacey Robbins, CASA, Denise Burley, who we know, Public Health, Deanna Flores, Deputy's Office, Brian Stock, Sheriff's Office, Leona Angel, County Attorney, and Judith Pickens. I want to thank everybody, not just this group, but the groups who've held over the last 7 years. We've done great, and now we're getting an award to show it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The only thing I have this time is that Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said her department would take a step towards doing the uranium reserves that Trump had put in place, so maybe we'll have some movement there. County Manager's report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have one item this morning, and it relates to county employees and turnover rates. We continue to experience high employee turnover rates in excess of 20%, and that is in all departments and classifications. And that, to be clear, that I'm speaking of the employees leaving the county employment pool altogether. That does not include transfers between departments. In 2020, we had 195 people move on. And if you break those down, you look at them, we have about 10 to 12% for retirement, about 24 to 25% involuntary dismissal, and the rest, which is about 63%, voluntary moving on for opportunities and so on. That was for 2020, as you heard. 2021 to date is very similar in all 3 categories. We're noticing that we're getting fewer and fewer applications for positions. We used to get a couple of dozens, maybe 3 per position. We're getting half of that amount now. Positions are staying open longer, and I suppose, and this is perhaps speculating on my part, but it's based on the information that we have, that the reason we're having about 1 in 4 or 25% of involuntary separation is perhaps due to hiring people that perhaps lack the necessary job skills when they start. We bring them on board and give them an opportunity to demonstrate their ability to train and learn, but then we end up dismissing during the probation period. So, and that's of the involuntary separation. That seems to be the largest factor or the largest contributor. We currently have over 35 active recruitment going on, and some of them have been open for a while. Just wanted to share that with you, board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve February 16th and March 1st, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion to approve the proclamation declaring June 2021 as World Elder Abuse Month.
Oh, I'll
So
make that
moved.
motion.
Pardon? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a call to the public. We have Kenny Works.
Kenny Works, Yucca, Arizona. I just wanted to read this article in memoriam of Tom Bethel, 1936 to 2021, by Harley Price. I'll only pick a few paragraphs. Harley Price is a medieval Renaissance scholar at the University of Toronto. With Tom Bethel's death in February, those who refuse what Orwell called the smelly little orthodoxies contending for our souls have lost an eloquent and redoubtable champion. Over the course of Bethel's 5 decades as a writer, consisting of 7 books and hundreds of essays, the malodorous certitudes of political correctness have piled up to Augean proportions. Augie being a Greek mythical character who didn't clean his stables for 30 years, and Hercules had to come in and finally clean them out. Bethel waded into them one by one, from cultural relativism to Einsteinian relativity, hosed them down and dressed them in motley for our sport. Bethel's doubts about the scientific rigor of Darwin's theory of evolution began to germinate while he was studying philosophy, psychology, and physiology at Oxford in 1960s. His groundbreaking 1976 Harper's Magazine article, Darwin's Mistake, he was the first to confute that dogma, root and branch, and have shattered the taboo, paved the way for the many critiques that would follow. By far the most readable of these and his own book, Darwin's House of Cards, 2016, Bethel pointed out that the natural selection argument employs circular logic. You can't find a criterion of fitness that is independent of survival, so it's the survival of the survivors, he said in a 2017 interview. He was one of the first to recognize that Darwinism was from the beginning a Trojan horse for the basing of religion in general and Christianity in particular. How, but for Bethel's questioning Einstein in 2009, would the average layman know that even the theory of relativity has been guarded with idolatrous zeal by its dedicated priesthood? The science is always settled when it supports progressive causes. The dirty little secret of contemporary science is that authority more and more replaces evidence. He observed a trend only accelerating during the current COVID hysteria. Question authority is the brave mantra of liberalism, even if it demands supine obedience to its own authority exclusively, and its thinking displays the most abject intellectual conformism. Bethel and his good... Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll go on to the consent, items 5 through 34. Anyone like to pull anything, Supervisor Angus?
Item 30, please.
30, Supervisor Bishop.
18.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 13, 22, and 24.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I was going to say item 13. Thank you.
15?
13.
Oh, 13, okay. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent minus 13, 15, is it 15 or 18? 18? What was it, Supervisor Gould, you pulled? 18, I believe it's.
13. No, my next one was 22.
Gene, did you pull 18?
18.
All right, then. 1322, 30 and 24?
And 18.
18,
Chairman Johnson, I
okay.
believe it's 18, 13, 18, 22, 24, and 30.
All right. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 13. To set a public hearing to approve the adoption of ordinance 2021-04. Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walsh, what are we doing here?
Chairman Johnson, Supervisor Gould, good morning. This ordinance here, basically what this is setting a public hearing to consider an ordinance. What the ordinance does is in the unincorporated areas of North Kingman that lie within the city of Kingman's water service boundary, there has been some question between the city and the county as far as when properties need to connect to the sewer system and when properties can obtain a septic system permit. And what this is looking to do is define that distance as 100 feet. Basically, if a property is within 100 feet of an existing sewer line, they'll be required to extend that sewer line to their property in order to connect. Currently, ADEQ guidelines, which the county falls under, requires that sewer line to be at the property line and that in order for us to withhold a septic permit from them. The city of Kingman within the city limits requires, if they're within 500 feet of a sewer line, that they've got to extend it that 500 feet. It's not real common, but we've had a number of cases over the past few years where a person has come to us for a septic permit. They meet our requirement to issue that septic permit, but then they go to the city of Kingman in order to obtain water service, and the city is saying, hey, you need to meet our septic requirements in order to connect. So we're hoping that this right here will provide that determination that within 100 feet they need to connect to sewer. Outside of that, the county will issue a septic permit.
So we're playing enforcer for Kingman's rules, effectively?
Not exactly. Currently, we're not playing enforcer right now. Basically, we have a delegation agreement.
Yeah.
We have a delegation agreement with the state that we enforce ADEQ's rules, and ADEQ's rules require that the sewer line be at the property line. City of Kingman has a requirement that if it's within 500 feet, they have to run that sewer line. We met with the city of Kingman a number of times, and we expressed our concern that 500 feet was quite extensive in order to connect to that, to require them to connect to sewer. We felt that this 100 feet, and where we came up with this 100 feet is in talking to a number of contractors around town to replace or install a new septic system, we find anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. And then we've also talked to contractors about what the cost would be to extend a sewer line, and we found that it's about $100 per foot. So by requiring this 100 feet maximum, if they're within 100 feet, ultimately, rather than paying to put a septic tank in, they'd be paying to extend that sewer line to their property.
Do we know what Kingman's sewer rate is currently?
The current rates, I don't know that offhand. I know it's a function of water usage in that, but I don't know exactly what the water is.
In Lake Havasu City residents pay $7 to get rid of every dollar worth of water that they buy. So the initial, my septic tank failed, I'm going to connect to the sewer, may not really be a good decision long term. And when they're talking about that the homeowner is going to pay for that 100 feet connection, and inside city limits are going to pay for 500 feet. Because I don't think the city runs the pipe to your property line. They're claiming you have to pay them to extend that sewer line 500 feet.
That is correct. Within the city limits, they are required if it's within 500 feet to connect.
Would this prevent me from putting a package sewer treatment plant where I could reuse the water? Because I think anywhere that somebody wanted to put a package plant in so that they could reuse the water for irrigation would be a positive, especially in the Kingman area.
Generally, and it's been a while since I've dealt with package plants, but generally, I believe your package plants are more designed for a large number of users. At least the ones that I've worked with. The individual wastewater treatment systems, your septic tanks, require that water be perked back into the ground through a leach field and that.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
Supervisor Gould, this is a fairly narrow application. It's really in a limited area in the North Kingman where there is an existing sewer line. What brought us into this discussion was a property owner who got caught in the middle, came to the county for septic permit, and then went to the city to get water, and the city informed them of their requirements. So we had multiple meetings with the city. As Mr. Walsh pointed out, the initial request was for 500 feet. We thought that was excessive, and that's something that the board would likely not entertain. Looked at the costs associated with it, and understanding that the city does transport the sewer effluent water and treats it and uses it for recharge into the aquifer. We saw an opportunity, and to minimize the confusion for property owners so they know what is required. We saw this as being a reasonable ordinance. Again, it's for a specific and limited zone or application, which is in the North Kingman area, also known as Butler. I think it only exists in this one location that we've experienced in Mojave County as a whole. So we wanted to bring it to you for consideration. We did not think it was fair for the property owner to experience what they did, and they did experience a frustrating situation where they went back and forth between the two public agencies.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Gould.
So, Mr. Walsh, so in the event of a failed septic system, will this require the homeowner to connect to the sewer?
That is correct. And if they are installing a new septic system or replacing an existing system that failed, they lie within 100 feet of an existing sewer line, they would need to extend that sewer line. If I may add just another comment, this area, it's the North Kingman area, and for the most part, many of the lots in this area are 50 by 100 foot lots. These lots don't leave a whole lot of room for septic and other, basically for a septic system and a backup system. And with the density of that area and the number of septic systems, it does cause some concern for nitrate loading, nitrogen loading in that area for that total number of septic systems in that area. So I know the city, actually the county and the city, probably about 3 years ago, partnered up to begin extending sewer into that area. It started with the Devlin sewer line, and the intent was is to try and encourage those properties to convert from septic over to sewer lines. We felt that this 100 feet would be a more reasonable approach to it than the city's 500 foot. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Bishop.
I believe that because of the concentration of septic tanks in the North Kingman area, commonly known as Butler, there are concerns about the contamination of the aquifer because there's so many condensed in such a small area that I think the county has been considering extending the sewer lines into the county area, and possibly some of the CARES money can go toward that extension. And I think there's also grants available to low-income families to connect to these sewer lines when they become available.
I have a question. Oh, you go ahead, Mr. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. I remember this issue when I was on council. And as I remember it, as has been stated, that due to the concentration of small lots there, when a system fails, there's not a whole lot of room to put in a new septic, right? I'm happy to hear that this proposes 100 feet rather than 500 feet, because I think 500 feet is a little too much. One thing that I want to know is there a possibility in the future somehow, some way down the road, where ADEQ would come in? I remember something about you don't want ADEQ to come in and mandate that you fix the situation. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll try and do it without too much speculation, but my understanding is yes, we have a higher concentration of septic systems in this area due to the smaller lots and the no sewer lines being extended or in the area. I believe, and I don't want to give false information, but I believe sometime back there was some concern that ADQ could come in and mandate that sewer needs to be run in an area. I'm not sure that it was this area, but due to nitrogen rates and nitrogen loading, ADQ could look at an area and say, hey, the rates are too high, sewer needs to be run through here. And in that type of situation, the county or the city would be forced to run those lines and then either assess those properties or somehow recover those funds. Again, I'm not sure the detail on this specific area, if that was a concern or occurred, but that is a possibility.
Let me rephrase a little bit. In what situations does ADEQ step in?
Okay, that's a good question. And specifics, I don't know the specific numbers that are required for ADEQ to step in, but if ADEQ were to see an area where contamination was a concern, then they would become more motivated and look into it. But I can get more information on that and find out more specifics and get back to the board on that one for sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Mr. Walsh, that was the same threat that was used by the real estate industry in Lake Havasu City to place every property in Lake Havasu City under $30,000 worth of bond debt to install a sewer system. ADEQ never came in and said that they were going to shut down the economy of Lake Havasu City. The two instances in Arizona that ADEQ put a building moratorium up was in Page, Arizona, where they built a waste treatment pond without an ADEQ permit, and in Bullhead City, which was a failed septic system, or failed sewer system. My concern is for the folks in this area, because the rate will be charged to pay off whatever debt burden the city of Kingman has placed by creating a waste treatment system. I'd feel much better about this is that would allow them to connect rather than force them to connect on the failure of a system. You're going to see people that have failed systems that won't replace them because they don't want to spend the money to connect to the sewer also. Thank you.
Didn't Havasu refinance to save money?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Havasu refinanced their debt because they didn't want to pay off the debt because they would have to raise the water rate. So they got the law changed at the legislature to allow a refinancing of that debt. That refinancing of the debt cost the taxpayers of Lake Havasu City, I believe, $78 million. The project altogether was a $500 million project, because people felt that the channel of Lake Havasu City was becoming contaminated with nitrates. They had no proof of that. If you saw raising nitrate levels in the well water in that particular area, it might necessitate something to do something with it. They also make denitrifying septic tanks. But a big government solution, a private solution is always going to be better than a big government solution. So if somebody can recycle the water on their own property to use for irrigation of ornamental shrubs and trees, that's a better solution than a centralized sewer. Thank you. At
Mr.
least
Chairman.
in my opinion.
Supervisor Bishop.
Just point of order, this agenda item is just to set a public hearing. It's
Right.
not the actual hearing itself. So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve item 13 as submitted.
Have a second?
Like a substitute motion to deny.
You accept the substitute motion?
I don't think so.
No, on the motion right here, we're on the motion to approve. If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. There's no necessary need for a substitute motion. If it doesn't pass, then it's not going to be set. There's no need for a substitute motion. So I think we need to rule on the motion that has been on the floor right now by Supervisor
second
Bishop.
I'll second it, the motion.
A motion and a second, further discussion.
You're out of order.
It doesn't. I don't think we're out of order. We're following what we've been doing for many, many years, and by a practical matter, your substitute motion will be heard if it's denied. So if it's denied, then it won't go forward, or there could be somebody else that does a different motion or anything like that. So there's no need for a substitute motion.
I'll yield just for a point of expediency.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries. Item 22?
18.
Oh, 18, okay. Item 18, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This agenda item has been brought to my attention by some constituents from the Golden Valley area who are questioning whether or not we can donate this water, and if we can, they would like their private 501c groups considered for donation of the excess unused water that we gathered during the water well situation. So, Tammy, can you enlighten us on this?
I don't know that I can, so thank you. This agenda item was placed based on, now I got to find the right statute. I believe that we can donate, and I think Ryan's looking it up right now. I think that sitting as the board of directors for the Golden Valley Improvement District, I believe that you could make that recommendation. What we were proposing was a partial donation to the fire district in the area, and then selling it to recoup the cost that the county expended, so that the GVID would get the money back for anything that we sell.
Okay, and giving this water to the fire department, is that kosher? I mean, are we abusing the gift clause, or is it because that fire department provided services and this is in lieu of payment, sort of?
I don't want to speculate, but I do believe that the thought was the allowance of use of their site and their staff to help us in distribution of the water, that it would be like a substitution or a thank you for what they've given us. I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I like the idea, actually. I just want to make sure that it's legally okay.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, the drinking water emergency that we had lasted well over a week. We needed a place where we could provide water in the meantime. We did not know the duration of that downtime, so we wanted to make arrangement that would sustain us. The fire department provided their Golden Valley Training Center, which was ideal for what we needed it. People could come and go and not be in the way of any emergency responders. So that was just only one way of the ways that they stepped up and helped us during that emergency. Having said that, and again, not knowing the duration, we acquired adequate water supply to sustain us. Fortunately, everybody worked really hard to resolve it. We resolved it in less time than we had anticipated, and we had water left over. The district paid for that water, so we wanted to recoup as much of that cost as possible. Hence the idea of transferring it to the park selling it to the park to allow them to use it, and the district would recoup the better part of their cost. And the donation, we thought it was pretty insignificant compared to the amount of help that the fire district provided to us. So again, the board can change that, but we want it to be completely transparent and bring it in front of you to let you know how we're handling that excess water that we were left with.
Thank you very much. Then if Ryan doesn't have a problem with it as far as the legalities, I'll make a motion that we approve as written.
Have a second? I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next one, 24 or 30?
22.
22, yeah. Approve utilization of Pima County Cooperative Contract for ballot on demand. Hold that.
I think it was Ron Gold.
Supervisor Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I get Alan to come up and explain what we're doing.
Good morning, everybody. Chairman, supervisors, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. What would you like to know, Supervisor Gold?
I just wanted to make sure this is for the handicapped ballot markers
It is.
and not for printing of ballots otherwise inside the precinct.
You're correct.
Thank you.
Say. You are correct.
We've had a lot of election issues lately, and I just thought to put a little clarity on what we were doing for the public.
Okay, you want me to, I kind of I'm sorry, you want me to discuss that?
Give us a
Oh, yeah.
brief explanation, please.
Impossible a brief, right? Okay, kind of a joke. People's known me forever. All right. This item is, okay, I'm going to start saying we have $160,000 worth of Help America Vote Act money that we can use for certain things, and this is one of them. Help improve voting systems. Now, I found and thought what would be a very good use for this money is to add to and as backups of current voting equipment that we have. Current voting equipment as in, we're going to say handicap accessible ballot marking devices. Handicap accessible ballot marking device is a touchscreen device, which is getting more and more popular all the time, we'll say all over the state, all over the country, but here in Mojave County as well. Now, what I'm proposing to do with some of that money, which was, hold on for a second. This is pretty cool. See this? I need to see now. Little things come out. Father's Day gift. Okay. This one here, of the $160,000, I'm proposing we use $56,000 and some change towards getting 12 more handicap accessible voting devices to be used for, number one, as a backup, because our devices right now are purchased in 2016, and like anything else, things start to break, even if they're not being used on a regular basis. Okay? So I want to get 12 more. I can put them, they're generic, anywhere out in the fields. And if one has to go someplace or I get a polling place that starts getting slammed with people, I have that information, I have that equipment there to use. So really what it does is the proper ballot is chosen for the person. It comes up on the screen. The person votes that by touching the touch screen. A ballot card prints out with their selections, as they would have got a ballot card at the precinct, and if they would have filled in the dots, and then that ballot card is then taken over to the ballot box and dropped in, where it has been brought to my office that evening to be counted. So it's not memory inside the devices. There's nothing. It's nothing but ballot styles, and the proper one is pulled out and marked. And the voter gets to look at it and see if was that my selection. Did I vote for this gentleman or that lady or what have you right in front of them? And it's like anything else. If there was a wrong selection made, then they get to spoil their ballot like they would a full-face ballot at the polling place and do it again. Is that good?
That's great.
Okay, great.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman
motion?
Johnson?
Supervisor Angus.
I just want to thank Mr. Tempert came down to my office. I think he went to everyone's office and gave us a demonstration of that equipment, which I like. You know, I was in a polling place and people like that, and I think it will be used more often. Just want to reiterate that the vote is not kept in the machine like what we're hearing.
Correct.
The ballot, it's an independent ballot. You can check that ballot if there's a mistake. So I think it's sort of the best of all worlds right now.
I think it's wonderful.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're going to have any luck going to 30? 24, all right. Who pulled 24?
Hey.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, what are we doing here?
Basically the same thing, except we're replacing existing voting equipment. We have in our voting equipment arsenal, it's a nice arsenal, we have electronic polling books. Electronic polling books is how people are checked in at the polling locations when they go and vote on election day. It has all the super cool information needed to make sure that the right people are coming in, the wrong people aren't allowed to vote, and they get the correct ballot style and so on. We have our computers, they're laptop computers. And what it comes down to is after 6 years, they're dying on us. It's like any other computer, you know, out there. Once again, it sits there, and I even replaced all the batteries on all 150 of them last year going into the general election. And it got us through. I knew it was going to work out fine, but I know it's not a long-term solution. Our vendor tells me, hey, we have to move up on our operating system. You've had these long enough to begin with, so you need new laptop computers to make this work. What I'm trying to do with this Help America Vote money, 100,000 of it, which I'm requesting in the budget for the fall to replace anyway, I want to use the HAVA money, Help America Vote Act money, to replace these 150 laptop computers. That's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 30. Supervisor Gould.
No, it's me.
Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Item 30 is to approve conducting a mail ballot election to be held on November 2nd, 2021 for the Mojave Valley Elementary School District, number 16, for the purpose of voting on a special maintenance and operation budget override. You can speak to this?
I can speak to this.
Okay, the reason I took this out is I wanted some more information about whether I could vote no on it. So I was told that this is just asking if it could be a mail-in ballot or else it will be a walk-in, people in person. Okay, so how much is that difference?
Gotcha. Now, the three factors that are really involved in an election are a voter information pamphlet, which will be sent to everybody, and that's going to be the same cost regardless. We're going to kind of put that to the side, okay? And then you have the recorders and the elections fees. Now, we can run elections cheaper by mail ballot than put people in polling places. It's just a fact. It's just a fact, and you get better at it as each one you're allowed to do. So the differences are, I quoted two prices with mine and the recorders cost associated months back to Mr. File. Now, the cost that I quoted him was for a mail ballot election. I told him with the number of registered voters at 15,798 at that time, right? Things go up, things go down a little bit, right? $41,687.31. That's a mail ballot election. For a polling site election, it's $58,887.61, so it makes it $17,000 more expensive. So that's the difference.
Okay, and how much would it have been if they just waited another year and did it on the general election in 2022?
That one I wasn't prepared for,
Okay.
but a lot less. But I'll give you
A
a
lot
rough
less.
estimate.
That's just my point. It's
Yeah,
a lot less. And the reason I bring that up is because the same question was on the 2020 ballot in November, and it failed spectacularly, 60% to 39%. So now the district is spending district money to put it on the ballot this year instead of next year, because I believe it might be a override that is sunsetting or something like that.
Couple of
And I
years.
think, I'm just going to be honest, I think it's sneaky. I do. I think it's using, again, district money. They want this override, and they're going to keep having elections until they get it. And I just want people to be aware of that. No matter whether it's 41 or 58, it's still money coming out of that district budget for a tax they already said 7 months ago they don't want. Right? So I just wanted to bring this up to everyone's attention. And you can do what you want. I mean, again, they're going to do it anyway, whether or not we say, but I'm going to vote no on it just for the principle alone.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, so the process, if it's an all-mail election, will every registered voter in that district get a ballot?
They will.
So I would assume that the turnout would be better also in that election since it's an off-cycle election
Statistically,
with
yes.
mail than it would be if they had to request a mail ballot if they weren't on the permanent list or whatnot.
Yeah, statistically, mail ballot elections do have a better turnout than on-the-ground poll site elections that are not held concurrently with general elections.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? So even on off-year elections, it's a one-question ballot.
Still going to be, when you put something in front of a person, they're more willing to...
I don't know if I agree with that, but anyway, it is what it is. We'll see.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll do it. Mr. Chairman, I move that item 30 be adopted.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the public hearings. All right, open the public hearing, discussion possible action, approve an increase to the juvenile detention per diem fee from $363 to $371. I have no one from the public signed up to speak. Would anyone from the public wish to address this issue? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor.
I move that item 36 be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 37, Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. At this time, I believe we have Mr. Patrick Cunningham in the office from High Ground. We put this on the agenda to give everybody in Mojave County just a comprehensive overview of all of the water issues that Mojave County is dealing with right now. It's a good idea to get High Ground up here more, to have more face-to-face interaction with our board. So this is the first of those. And Patrick, I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members, Patrick Cunningham, High Ground Public Affairs. Pleasure to be back with you again. This is a water update on about 5 big water issues we're working on, most of which you're going to know all about already, but we're going to cover as much as you guys want to cover. So as I go through each point, feel free to stop me anytime with questions, inquiries, or frankly, angry editorial comments. Jeff Cross would normally be here with me. Jeff Cross is our general counsel at High Ground. He is out of state on family business today, but you'll see his smiling face in the future in addition to mine. If you want to have any more details about this, we'd be delighted to send you in writing one of our many updates that we send. We have been sending updates to Supervisor Lingenfelter on the water stuff. As you can imagine, the legislature percolates this stuff every week. We send a lot of legislative stuff to Supervisor Bishop. Mr. Chairman, members, if you guys want to be on that list, we're happy to send you that stuff in writing. We also like doing it face-to-face. Last time I was here, I think it was October of last year, and so we're pleased to come up anytime and chat. So the 5 things we're going to cover today: the legislature and what Representative Cobb is up to, and we'll cover 3 bills in particular. Number 2, the Hualapai Basin groundwater situation. Number 3, Colorado River transfers, and in particular, the Greenstone Transfer that is still very much alive and is coming up for a public process soon with the Bureau of Reclamation. Then we have the 2026 guidelines. 2026 guidelines calculation is that starting on December 31st, 2026, our old guidelines on how we operate the Colorado River from beginning to end will cease. And so we need new guidelines. The 7 basin states, the Bureau of Reclamation, and at least 10 tribes are heavily involved in that, and that process is going to go on for a while. And last, the Hualapai tribal settlement. And we'll talk completely about public record information regarding the Hualapai settlement, because the actual negotiations themselves are covered by a non-disclosure agreement. So let's start with the legislature. Three important bills that Representative Cobb has introduced again this year. Those are a bill on rural management areas. Rural management areas are a concept brought to the legislature in 2018 by this board, in which we asked the legislature to consider an opt-in program where county boards of supervisors could opt in to manage individual basins, groundwater basins, that are at risk. The one for us is the Hualapai Valley Basin. The legislature has seen that bill in the last 2 years, both 20 and 21. In 2020, the bill actually got an informational hearing because Representative Cobb was able to put it in her own committee, in the Appropriations Committee. But that bill has not gone anywhere for a vote, and it's not going to be voted on this year. But rural management areas is still a very big issue, and it's the subject of a study committee. And the study committee was going to start in June, but as you know, the legislature is still working on a budget here in June, and they're not anywhere close to being done as of 3 minutes ago when I checked my phone. So maybe in July, the study committee will meet. The study committee is not required to report until December 31 of this year. So rural management areas, one of the 3 important bills that's very much still on our radar screen. We're working with Representative Cobb on that and a variety of other stakeholders to try to push that bill along. Second bill, prospective INAs. This board, as you well remember, has asked twice for the Department of Water Resources to declare an irrigation non-expansion area in the Hualapai Basin, where we have about 11 industrial farms that are pumping our groundwater. A irrigation non-expansion area would grandfather in the current farms, if you've been farming in the last 5 years, but would prevent future farms. DWR has said to us twice, look, we can only grant an INA if there's not enough water now for agricultural use. Well, this board doesn't want to wait till we're out of water. You want to press ahead. That's what the prospective INA would do. Prospective INA was raised by the governor in his water conversation way back in 2017, the first year that you hired High Ground to go work on this issue. That bill has been introduced each year after that. It too got a hearing in both the House and the Senate in 2020, but not a vote. There's a lot of people who oppose prospective INAs. That will be the subject of the study committee work this summer also in I'm optimistically saying August. The third bill is a bill that says there's a certain amount of water over on the Colorado River called Priority 4 water. It is 164,000 acre feet of water. The river community believes that way back in the Mofford administration, DWR had set aside or reserved that water for the river communities. That's 164,000 acre feet. How much water, Priority 4 water, you might ask, did Central Arizona get? They get about 1.6 million acre feet. Now, they can't order that every year. Some years they order less than that. Surely this year, because of our drought, they're going to order far less than that. But they have a lot of water that goes to them. This $164,000 is part of it is being transferred now in the eyes of Greenstone and the town of Queen Creek to transfer about 2,000 acre feet to Queen Creek. This bill, introduced for the third time now by Representative Cobb, would say that $164,000, as a matter of policy, is reserved for the river communities. To no one's surprise, that bill did not get a hearing either. That might come up in a study committee, one never knows. So in the legislature, we're also well aware that rural voices on groundwater and surface water are sometimes muted. And so in the last probably 4 months, Mayor Cal Sheehy from Lake Havasu and Mark Clark from Bullhead City and Jamie Kelly, the general counsel of the Mojave County Water Authority, came to high ground and said, we'd like to reinvigorate rural water interests, rural water folks who want to get involved with the legislature to protect rural water. So we've been working on that issue. Supervisor Lingenfelder has been involved in that. Mojave County Water Authority came up with this idea, and to our delight, as we contacted people in rural counties and cities around Arizona, people are very interested in doing this. This group would be very much informal. It has private sector members, it has public members from towns, cities, and of course it has county members. So the purpose of this organization, as we work to bring it together, is to work at the legislature, work frankly at county seats and in city halls to protect our groundwater and our surface water in rural Arizona. The folks who are in the population centers, as you might imagine, have lots of lobbyists, and they have lots of funds to do that. We're looking to get an informal group together, and one of the persons said to us, we did this 35 years ago. I don't know why we stopped. We'd love to be a part of this. So this involves all kinds of counties where all kinds of legislators sit, especially ones who control committees. And so that's very important to us. That's one of the many things we're working on in the legislative package. Let me stop now. That's a quick snapshot of the legislature, and I've saved you from all of the budget discussions because I know you actually have a life. Mr. Chairman or others, questions on that topic before I press on?
Go ahead, Lingenfelder.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Yeah, I think it's also important to mention, it looks like we're going to be talking about that under the proposed Colorado River transfers. But I will make a comment on the Interested Rural Water Coalition, the interested parties. After what happened this legislative session where Representative Cobb's bills have again died, Representative Cobb cannot do this alone. So we have to band together as many as we can up and down the river and everywhere in rural Arizona that we can to try to push these bills through this next legislative session. So that's important work, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
I have a question, Mr. Cunningham, on this Rural Water Association you brought up. Who's paying for you to be involved in that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members, everything we do on behalf of Mojave County is covered in by our agreement with you guys. So you guys are the only ones paying us to be involved in that.
I guess that kind of concerns me when you say the mayor of Lake Havasu and Mojave County Water Authority, an illegally formed water authority, is coming to you for getting you involved. It seems like that should be something that should be brought to the board, where the board decides if we're going to be involved in that and then assign somebody to it. But the board will decide on that. That was all.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, let me make absolutely clear. After we went to work for you guys in the summer of 17, Mojave County Water Authority came and said, we'd like to retain you as a lobbyist. All right. And we cleared that through the board. So Mojave County Water Authority does pay us also far less than you pay us. So we are their lobbyists at the legislature, right? But as far as this informal association, which is a group of folks that want to come forward, that idea did generate with the Mojave County Water Authority, which is why I wanted to make that clear.
And we don't have any conflict of interest with the Water Authority because they buy and sell water, which is not part of their original designation.
Mr. Chairman, members, I'm well aware of your history with the Mojave County Water Authority, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's a conflict at all. We think we are absolutely parallel. Because Mojave County Water Authority and Mojave County are almost every time speaking in the same voice at the legislature and, frankly, with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, where you both oppose these transfers off the river.
Thank you. Is there any other questions at this time for the
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Bishop?
Patrick, I appreciate everything that High Ground does for Mojave County as a whole, especially on the water situation. And I know Representative Cobb is on top of water issues, but I'm wondering if you could share with us what Representative Biasucci and Senator Borelli are doing to help the situation here in Mojave County.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members, Supervisor Bishop, thank you so much for that. The involvement of both the Senator and Representative Biasucci has been intense when we go to them and make a request. They will defer to the leadership of Representative Cobb most of the time, but when we go to them and say, we need a letter or we need you to make this key phone call, they are immediately on top of that. And last year, there was a particular bill in the legislature that we did not think very much about at all, and Representative Biasucci was one of the two people who were able to stop that bill in the House. So they have stepped out on a limb on behalf of Mojave County on several occasions. As far as their other continued work, Senator Borelli is co-chair of these study committees we're talking about. So he has worked in the past with the study committee when it has met, and he will be doing that again this summer. Representative Biasucci, in particular, on this transfer from Greenstone, he had a couple family matters that he had to attend to, but before he went to those, he made sure that he wrote a letter, he reviewed the language with us to make sure it was absolutely right and accurate, and he got that letter in the mail before he went on to his family obligation. So they've been with us right there all the way, and frankly, we are taking the lead of Representative Cobb, and that's to no surprise to any of you. She has been all over these issues, and as chairman of the Appropriations Committee, you know, when she calls someone as opposed to me, she tends to get a call back.
Okay, thank you. Basically, I asked that question so that our constituents that are watching this on live will understand that, you know, all of our legislators and our senators and our cities and towns and even La Paz and Yuma County, we're all really watching this situation and working hard.
Couldn't agree more. Mr. Chairman, I'll move on now to the Hualapai Valley groundwater situation. The history of this, I think you all know, but just quickly, way back in 2017, when we were first retained to help the county on this, we already had about 170 wells drilled that were industrial, large, agricultural wells. In 2010, you had 0. In 2010, we had a lot of windmills for cattle, and they can pump, 7 gallons a minute. Now you have wells that are 20 and 30 inches in diameter that pump thousands of gallons a minute. Those wells were concerning to this board and to the Department of Water Resources that held lots of meetings here in Mojave County. We have been working with DWR to see if we could remedy the situation, and as I said earlier, twice this board has asked for a INA, and twice that's been denied. So the county stepped in and did work on its own. As you well know, you have funded, along with the city, a USGS numerical model to tell us what's happening in that basin. You got a report last October from USGS about that. We don't yet have the publication of that numerical model. That will be happening soon. As I checked in over the weekend, that is still delayed by the COVID backlog of USBR having to publish thousands of reports nationwide. So you have that tool that's coming. It's not quite in your possession yet, but it's going to be there soon. That's a wonderful tool. Spent about $400,000 on it, which you will be able to insert data about what we think the growth is going to be in Mojave County, and the model will tell us, it will predict for us with reasonable certainty how much water we have left. Why is that important? Well, way back in 2018, we worked at High Ground with Representative Cobb and Speaker Bowers. He wasn't the speaker then, he was the chairman of the committee then, to get an appropriation to do a snapshot assessment of the water in that basin because of the huge public demand that we do something about all these wells. That money was appropriated in 2018, and in December of 2019, the Matrix New World Study was published, and it says in the worst case, this is worst case, the Kingman portion of that basin only has 58 years of water left. Now that's if everybody builds out all their farms and they grow alfalfa, which they will probably not be doing. So the USGS study that you guys funded then calibrated a little differently and said to each of the farmers, tell us how much are you going to build out and what are you going to grow? And they did that, and your county staff then took to USGS what we thought was a more reasonable assessment of how much water is going to be used. And now we see that the water will probably, in that assessment, and again, it hasn't been published yet, but you got this report last October, that we will have water in that basin for over 100 years based on those assessments. Those are the bookends in which you find that basin. Could be as bad as only 58 years. It could be over 100 years. What we propose next is that when the numerical model is published, that you instruct staff, and I think it's safe to say the county administrator, who happens to be an engineer, can't wait to do this. We will then go to each of our agricultural interests who own property here and are farming and get from them their best estimate about how much are they going to build out. In our USGS study, we assume that some of the folks would only build out and plant half of their land because that's what they told us they would do. Now, I think you probably have some folks in the audience who would say, well, so you buy a whole bunch of land and you only plant half of it. Okay, but if we get from the farmer and the ag community reliable information about what they intend to do, we could put that into the model that you've paid very good money for. We can run that model and get a good prediction to advise you on the health of that aquifer. That will help us go to the legislature and say, we need rural management areas so that this board could get involved in managing its own water. That is a very big step for the Arizona legislature. You do not have that power now. I'm just simply stating the obvious. So we have work to do in the Hualapai Basin. We have the right tool to get there. We have one study that says it's going to drop below 1,200 feet in as little as 58 years in one area. That's the Kingman subarea. The Hualapai subarea is a little bit better. That's to the north and to the east, to the west. And then farthest to the northwest, it's called the Southern Gregg subarea of this aquifer. This aquifer is huge. That is stronger still. So it's not all bad news. But if we continue to pump heavily from the Kingman aquifer, we could face a situation in which the Kingman subpart could become separated from the Hualapai subpart. So water does not cascade from one to another, and it puts the Kingman subpart at a greater risk. That's the reason we're working with urgency to get the Rural Management Area Bill or some other bill like it passed so you could begin to take action to protect your aquifer.
All right, I have a question before you go too much farther. How many acre feet does the city of Kingman pump out of the aquifer?
So, Mr. Chairman, members, in a year, probably the city of Kingman and all of its environs are probably pumping about 15,000 acre feet. Okay, and the good Lord is putting in maybe 8 to 10,000 acre feet. So before we started the industrial farming here, we had over 200 years of water left in that basin. So we started in a really good spot. But they pump about 15,000 acre feet. When I say they, I mean the entire Kingman community.
Right, and that drops, the recharge is only 8,000 acre feet?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. We're not suggesting to you that this is ever going to be a safe yield aquifer. Like, in Tucson, they have a really good shot at reaching safe yield in their aquifer because they have all that CAP water they can pump into the ground. This aquifer does not have that luxury.
We had some builders in here talking, and one gentleman was talking about building over 200 homes a year in the Kingman area. Do you know, is the demand from the city of Kingman going up in the aquifer?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really know that.
All right, thank you.
All right. So that's my section on Hualapai Valley. I will move on now
Supervisor
to
Gould has a question, please.
Yes.
Mr. Cunningham, the 8 to 10,000 acre feet of recharge, is that sewer water from the city of Kingman?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, I wish it were that much. No. That is counting all of the infill from all of the side canyons and the washes in that huge area. Okay. There is, of course, the city plan that Supervisor Lingenfelter could talk about this in great detail, but yes, the mechanical plant the city of Kingman has, they have drilled a recharge well, which are very expensive, and they intend to recharge. I don't know that they've commenced that work and actually recharge, but that is their plan, to recharge all of their effluent into the aquifer.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to Colorado River transfers then. We have, on your behalf, battled 4 separate transfers of Colorado River water that have been proposed away from our county to central Arizona. First was the quartzite transfer in 2017, then the water asset management transfer, which was proposed from the Mojave Valley Irrigation and Drainage District to central Arizona in 17 and 18. CAP withdrew that plan. Quartzite, the director of DWR, recommended against that plan. The third is the creation of intentionally created surplus. That is still ongoing. Mojave Valley Irrigation District has an excellent program. It's been approved by USBR in the state of Arizona to store water in Lake Mead, and that's called intentionally created surplus. That's a wonderful thing, except for one sentence in the 2007 guidelines that says you can transfer intentionally created surplus to any other Section 5 contractor. That would be the Central Arizona Project. So we have to watch that ICS because it could be transferred to CAP eventually. Our colleagues at CAP and DWR have raised that issue with us in a meeting last year. They were quite explicit that they're well aware of our concerns about that, but other states need to be able to transfer ICS. It's just in Mojave County, we have particular concern about our water going into Lake Mead and then going somewhere else far away. That is part of the guidelines negotiation. It all fits together as a mosaic. But right now, ICS creation is a wonderful thing because it strengthens Lake Mead. And if you've been to South Cove recently, you know that we need to strengthen Lake Mead. I checked this morning. We're at 1,070 feet. We're 2 inches lower today than we were yesterday. We are in a shortage, and I'll talk for a moment about that shortage and how it affects us. The fourth transfer is the Greenstone Transfer. The Greenstone Transfer is about to go to a public process with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. They will do an environmental assessment, and this board, along with all the mayors and other boards and other interests in Mojave County, Yuma County, Coconino, La Paz, we will have to make a very strong statement in that environmental assessment to explain to USBR, as we have explained to DWR, why this water that is being used in agricultural purposes south of Parker in Cibola, why it should not be transferred 170 miles to the east to Queen Creek. We have explained to Queen Creek when Supervisor Watson and us at High Ground, we met with them early on in 2019 and explained they have 5 other sources of water they could get. And we'd like them to not take water from the river community, but use one of those 5 sources of water. Just to name a couple of those. Hualapai Valley is a transfer basin west of Phoenix. It has millions of acre-feet of water. They could buy and transfer water from there. They could buy water from the Gila River Indian Community. Gila River Indian Community has rights to a bunch of water that goes cascading up the canal into the Phoenix area every year. They could buy some of that water. They could make use of the CAGRID system, where you can join CAGRID, the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District that the legislature created, so people could grow in Central Arizona, and CAGRID will then find water as needed. Those are just some of the many examples, but Greenstone and Queen Creek are pushing ahead with this transfer. And unless the river communities make a strong case in the environmental assessment, it will be approved by the Secretary of Interior. After the EA is done, you will see me again in front of you saying, if they proceed with only an environmental assessment and they don't do a full-blown environmental impact statement in which we can flesh out what the loss of wealth is going to be on the river communities, if they don't do that, you may have to proceed with another option, which is to go to federal court and say you need to do a full EIS. Why would you want to do that? Because that water is valued at $307 million. If that water is transferred to Queen Creek, that amount of wealth will be transferred from your communities to their community. Now, that water is going to be worth more in Queen Creek today than it is here, because they have a lot more people. But that's the value of the wealth over time, because your communities up and down the river will be able to grow and use that water, and the multiplier effect will generate millions of dollars of wealth. If you don't fight it tooth and nail, it will be approved, and it will be the first transfer of water off of the river community into Central Arizona. How is the river today, you might ask? Well, the river today is a lot lower, and we're probably going to be in shortage situations. I think in front of your terminal, I see now the shortage chart that looks like this, and it's got wonderful columns in it that are worth reading. Why in the world, you might ask, would I ask you to look at this Byzantine chart that has all these columns in it? Because there are 2 fundamental concepts of water management that this chart conveys. Number 1, the red box tells you that we are projected to be in shortage in the Colorado River for the first time ever. It's not the first time the water's been this low. In the year 1200, it was equally low. We are going to be in shortage next year, and instead of Arizona getting 2.8 million acre feet, we're going to get 2 million acre feet minus and I'm looking now in the combined columns on the far right side, minus 512,000 acre feet that Arizona will lose. Nevada will lose 21,000 acre feet. Mexico will lose 80,000 acre feet. We're going to lose a total of 613,000 acre feet that we're going to leave in Lake Mead in 2022 to try to keep the lake propped up. So I'm asking you to read this chart because it shows you how dire the situation is. I must tell you, as Supervisor Lingenfelder has stressed to me on Friday, the river communities do not lose money in this round of shortage. Let me say that again. The river communities do not lose water in this round of shortage. Central Arizona Project loses water. But that doesn't mean that we're insulated forever. So the first take home from this Byzantine chart is we're going to be in shortage in 2022. The second part of the chart that's really important is the drought contingency plan is working. You supported the drought contingency plan. We went down and fought for the drought contingency plan. We spent a year working through it. First, it was at the beginning of the process, it was Supervisor Wakamoto who sat in the chair for Mojave County. Then it was Supervisor Watson. Now it is Jamie Kelly sitting in the chair on behalf of Mojave County and Mojave County Water Authority. We fought to get DCP. It is working, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But the second take home from this is that if this water goes down further and slips below 1045, if you look at that on the column that says 1045, you will see that the state of California will begin to accept some shortage also. Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, drought contingency plan for the first time since 1968 requires that California share in the shortage. You remember that we passed the CAP Authorization Act. Lyndon Johnson and our, venerable senator, who had Carl Hayden, who had been at the Congress only since 1912. We passed the CAP Act, and California agreed to it and stopped blocking it after 50 years of blocking it on the condition that they never take a shortage, because they were using the water far sooner than we were. In the DCP, they agree that they will take a shortage of 200,000 acre feet if we get to 1045. That is a really important part of the DCP. That's why we urged the legislature to approve it, and they did approve it. As we renegotiate the guidelines, and the guidelines, they're usually good for about 20 years. So as we renegotiate the guidelines, 7 basin states, including California, 5th largest economy on the planet, we will negotiate with them to ask them to take additional shortages as we do. We take the lion's share of the shortage because we're the last state in. So the DCP is really important, but the declaration of shortage and how we accept these shortages is going to happen in 2022. And we have to pay strict attention to how it works because we're going to renegotiate the guidelines in the coming years. And you want a seat at the table because you have water that's at stake. The other chart that you're looking at right now reaffirms to you that the on-river users take no reductions in our anticipated shortage next year. And I just wanted to make sure that was in there. That's page 17 you're looking at. So who takes the cuts if we lose 508,000? The agricultural pool takes a cut. The non-Indian agricultural pool takes a cut. And then we spring into action with mitigation. The DCP has mitigation. And we spent at High Ground months in monthly meetings with ag interests, city interests, conservation group interests who can write checks, and members of smaller agricultural districts to work out some kind of mitigation so these farmers are not left with no water next January. And so the DCP mitigation will kick in next January, and they will get some water, right? And so creative things like the Gila River Indian Community sells water, right? And CAP pays for it, and that water can go into these pools to mitigate the loss. So that's easy water. Even more creative, cities that are using water right now from CAP, they're using their water to store it underground. Instead of them storing it in their own storage facilities, they're going to send it to farmers. And farmers will use it on their land, and then that water percolates down, it goes back into the groundwater, and the cities will get credits for that. So we've moved the location of just storing water underground in a city facility to a farmer facility, and we're getting 2 for 1, right? We still get to store the water, and the farmers get water in the middle of a drought. There are creative ways of doing that. There's a variety of other mitigation. So in 2022, people who are losing water are not going to be completely lost. However, if the drought persists and we go into shortage in 23 and 24, that mitigation water does not extend forever because there just isn't the water. The DC plan is working. We're probably going to be in shortage next January. We're about 20 feet below where we were today than we were in 2020. So we've lost 20 feet in the last year. We're 15 feet lower than we were in 2019. Okay? So the lake clearly has a problem. But the DC plan is working, and we are going to be able to provide some mitigation through our state plan next year. That's it for Colorado River transfers. Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there before I go on to the 2026 negotiations. Questions?
I have a question. Are they still recharging the aquifers with the CAP? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, they absolutely are. And so you have some folks who have water rights that are recharging it, and it's in a variety of ways. It's in those underground storage facilities, and then it's in what's called groundwater storage facilities, which is just another name for sending it to farms first. So there's more of that water going to farms in 2022, plan to, than just we are today. But yes, recharge to try to reach safe yield is happening.
But from everything I understand, the recharge isn't working. Is there any thought to making these people, if the CAP, at least my understanding is, they don't buy the CAP water because it's more expensive, so they continue to ground pump, which lowers the aquifer. The water they're recharging isn't filling the aquifer. We're losing a lot of that that's running off in the rivers and taken out. Is there any thought about making these people take the water and they wouldn't have that problem, then the aquifers could just naturally recharge?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, there's intense thought about that. And the Kyle Center published a scholarly paper last year talking about the fact that we are often recharging in Area A, but we're groundwater pumping in Area B, and there's no connection. There's no hydrologic connection. So we're not sure you're getting your water that you actually put in. And then on the issue of groundwater pumping, trying to get them to stop groundwater pumping when CAP water is available. In 1980, the Groundwater Code made a lot of deals, and certain people got grandfathered in, and they have a right to pump that groundwater. And Mr. Chairman, they're continuing to do that. There is pressure on them to stop doing that, but you've got to provide some alternative besides simply saying your farm has to close.
The other question I had, I missed it. You talked about Supervisor Wakamoto was the chair of something, then Supervisor Watson, and now Jamie Kelly. What happened to Supervisor Lingenfeld?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, good question. The committee is called the Arizona Reconsultation Committee, and its members are chosen by DWR and CAP.
Okay.
We don't get to control that. We get to argue, we get to recommend, we get to meet with them and say, sure would be nice. And after that long process, they said, well, Jamie Kelly is going to be on it. So at least Mojave County is represented. But that's why we don't get to choose. You don't get to choose. It's up to DWR and CAP. There are lots of folks who argued to get on this committee and were simply shut out. They didn't get a chair because there's only so many chairs.
Ah, okay. So they picked an employee instead of one of the elected officials.
I'm sorry, Mr.
They
Chairman.
picked an employee instead of one of the elected officials because she's just the attorney for Mojave County Water Authority, correct?
Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. But the ability to bring expertise from the legal side is highly prized by DWR and CAP because they want to be able to read all these documents, these negotiations, to make sure legally we're in good shape. There's also another important part of that. When you're negotiating with 7 other states or 6 other states, Mexico and USBR, you want to be able to make sure that your communications are absolutely privileged. And by having lawyers sit on some of these committees, you can keep that privilege ironclad. When we're negotiating with all of our sister states, we want to be able to do that. So those are probably 2 of the reasons they thought about appointing her, and the fact that she's been a water lawyer for 25 years.
Any other questions? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Chairman Johnson, thank you. Patrick, what we didn't, I'd like to have a little more conversation on Rusty Bowers' proposed drought mitigation board. It's $200 million that has been proposed to be set aside. My understanding of that is that there's going to be an emphasis on new source creation to supplement the recharge efforts that are going on right now.
Yep.
Can you speak to that, please?
You betcha. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lingenfelter, the $200 million fund was revealed, I don't know, about 20 days ago or so. It's in the current draft of the budget, which doesn't have 31 and 16 votes. And maybe Supervisor Gould's really happy he's in his chair he's in now and not down there fighting that budget. But the fund is designed to bring new water to the system, and it has 3 general areas. One, it could fund people who have a right to take Colorado River water today. It could fund them to do something called forbear. If they engage in forbearance, they don't pump the water out of Lake Mead. They simply don't order their water. And the beauty of forbearance is that the 7 basin states and the Republic of Mexico will honor that, and they will not pump it either, which is super important because there's people who have higher priority than us. So we could pay people to forbear. That puts more water in Lake Mead. That's the number 1 issue. Number 2, this issue about about Central Arizona needing more water to grow. There's a provision that allows the state land department, which owns land in Hualapai Valley, to transfer some of that water, make money for the recipients of the state trust, and have that water be transferred to any of the communities in the Phoenix or the Pinal County AMAs, the active management areas. So we could use some of that money to transfer some of that water. That might reduce the pressure on them coming to the river communities to get our water. And number 3 is we could do desalinization outside the state, in the Sea of Cortez or elsewhere. We could maybe get stormwater from the Missouri River, because there are still studies going on that it's possible to get stormwater out of the Missouri River, bring it through the Continental Divide in tunnels, put it in the Colorado River, and bring it into the system that way. That would be an extraordinary undertaking. Everyone understands that. But Speaker Bowers wants to at least keep that on the table. The Sea of Cortez desalinization is being studied right now, and another innovative idea that MET, the Metropolitan Water District in Los Angeles, has, and the people in the state of Arizona are funding and participating in this, and that is this. All the wastewater that comes out of MET instead of going into the ocean, we could treat that, we could use that again, and if we paid for that, then maybe we could take some water out of the Colorado River. That fund of $200 million is for these big ideas that may indeed come to fruition. So we hope that bill gets passed. And I'm sure there's lots of other people who hope that too. So, Supervisor Lingenfelter, I did a quick summary there. I wonder if you had other issues about the $200 million fund you wanted to get out on the table.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
The 2026 guidelines renegotiation. We've covered part of this based on Mr. Chairman, your questions about Jamie Kelly. This group of 40 or so folks are broken into a couple subcommittees. There is a modeling and analysis subcommittee, and you see the work in modeling and analysis is to try to figure out how much water is the river going to generate for us. It's we need it to generate 18 million acre feet a year to try to keep up with all of the requirements, because you have 7.5 million in the upper states, you have 7.5 million in the lower states, you have our colleagues in Republic of Mexico, they get 1.5 million acre feet, and there's a variety of other folks who have draws. The river is simply not generating that much water. So we're trying to use the modeling and analysis work group to figure out how much water is realistic so we can plan for how we're going to get through the years in which we don't get that full amount. The plain truth of it is that in the early 20th century, we allocated the river based on really wet years. And if you look at the 1200 years that we're looking at now, it's not really wet. The climate we're living in right now is closer to the average. And of course, climate change is a tremendous problem because it's so hot in so many places that the water does not cascade down the river the way it used to do. So on your behalf, we're working in that modeling and analysis group. We are working with other colleagues, same kind of coalition group that we used when we did DCP to meet, work through these processes and propose to DWR and CAP how they want to do this modeling and analysis work group so we can get good information about how much water we're really going to get, and we can then tailor the 2026 guidelines to fit that. In addition to that, there's a strategy group, and the strategy group, we're lucky enough that Jamie Kelly is not only on the ARC group, but she can participate in all of this in detail from the lawyer side of it. It's very helpful. So in those guidelines, we are meeting at least once a month, maybe twice a month, with our colleagues to try to bring some clarity to that modeling process. And now, between now and sometime in maybe 2024, we'll have a deal. And it has to go to the United States Congress, has to go to the Arizona legislature, has to go to, so each of the states will approve it. We have to keep in mind all the Native American tribes who have interest in the water, in the river. They own many thousands of acre feet. So there's a variety of people. We try to bring all that together through the Arizona ARC group. That's the guidelines. And I'm going to pause there for any questions before I go on to the Hualapai settlement. And we'll be at the end of our list of 5.
Go right ahead.
The Hualapai tribal settlement, the things I'm about to talk about are completely in the public record. Mojave County signed a non-disclosure agreement years ago for things that are covered in the negotiations. These are not anything out of the negotiations. This is right out of the public record. Chairman Clark, Dr. Clark, from the Hualapai tribe made a wonderful presentation to the Governor's Water Council last September and articulated their need for water and a reliable settlement. There have been also bills introduced in 2019 in the Senate and the House. The Congressional Research Service did a nice study of those, and there's recently been joint letters. Recently, as within the last month, Senator Sinema and Senator Kelly sent a joint letter to the Department of Interior and our new Secretary of Interior, which, as you guys know, is from New Mexico and is a tribal member herself. They said that they are planning to introduce the bill yet again. That is simply incremental progress in trying to reach a settlement. How is that important to this board? In a word or two words, Grand Canyon West. Grand Canyon West is a tremendous commerce driver. At one point, they were the largest employer in your county. I think now they're the second largest employer. They employ 1,500 folks, and 500 of them are not tribal members. So there's a ton of folks that are generating income, sales tax, property tax, all of those things. It's a tremendous economic driver. The other thing that they could bring to the table is the Hualapais have a very good claim to 4,000 acre feet a year of Colorado River water. And when they get that water, it's possible they could lease some of that water if they're not using it for their own purposes. So if we could secure for them that 4,000 acre feet of precious Colorado River water, that would bring, again, more security, more economic vitality to Mojave County. How much water are we really talking about? The public record documents show that their claim is for 4,000 acre feet, and it would probably come from something called the Non-Indian Agricultural Fund. That is a pool that was set up in legislation by Senator Kyle years ago in 2004, and from that pool we can settle Indian tribal water rights. They will get about 1,115 acre feet that's absolutely firm and protected until the year 2108. The rest of that water will be in the non-Indian agricultural pool, and as I mentioned earlier and you saw on your chart, that's some of the water that is cut during a shortage. So how might there be a better way to get them some water? And Supervisor Lingenfelter has put on the table in January of this year, why not have some of that water from Cibola in Greenstone's water? Why not have that water go to the Hualapai tribe in settlement instead of going 170 miles to the east to the town of Queen Creek? Now, that idea is also supported in comments during the Greenstone comment process in the state process, and commenters from Mojave County put that on the table also. I'm not sure anyone reads 3,000 pages of comments, so Supervisor Lingenfelter has brought that to a little more of the public view. That water is priority 4 water, and today Greenstone's priority 4 water is not subject to shortage. Now, that may change in 2026, but it hasn't changed yet. So that's water that might be on the table, and in a public process, this board will have to decide in the public environmental assessment process that will begin with USBR, does the board want to make that argument? Does the board want to take that policy position? These are one of the many important water policy issues for you all to think about, deliberate on, and decide. But the bottom line is that the Hualapai settlement is moving forward incrementally. You remember the board voted in December that they were going to not have former Supervisor Watson was not going to be the point on that anymore. It's going to be Supervisor Lingenfelter. You did that vote in January, and we've been working with him on that ever since. That process continues, and so we will be working through that process. We had a call on Thursday, I think, or no, it was Friday afternoon, yes, and then that we were participating in, and then Supervisor Lingenfelder had a call himself on Thursday afternoon about that just last week. So we are continuing to work this process and hoping to bring more water into use in Mojave County, which I think is exactly why you hired us in 2017. So, Mr. Chairman, that is a quick review of 5 fundamental things we're working on. Love to know if you have additional questions or would like to see more information.
Quickness had nothing to do with that. Do you have any questions? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cunningham, do you have any details on the Sea of Cortez desalinization idea?
So my details are probably going to be less than fantastic, but here they are. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, in minute 323, which was part of the ongoing negotiation between the Department of State of the United States and Mexico, minute 323, we agreed to work with Mexico, country to country, on research and siting of a possible desalinization plant. It's from a macro view, the United States is very interested in trying to figure out how that's going to be done. They've done feasibility, the two countries working together have done feasibility studies on how we might make a ocean side and a bay side desalinization project work. I can get you those studies, but I don't have the details any more than that. Those are the ideas, and I think is obvious to you. If we can run a desal plant and get water to Mexico, then maybe we could take some of their 1.5 million acre feet that they get today in the Colorado River, and we could do a trade. That's the concept.
There's currently a desalinization plant on the Gila River that it's never really went into long-term production. They built it, mothballed it, and then fired it up later to get a test basis for what it cost to run it. But I haven't heard anything on that since.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, you're exactly right. It's a bit of a dinosaur plant in that it's very expensive to run, and it takes a lot of power. But you're absolutely right. That is one of the many things that we talk about. Last year, legislation was introduced to maybe fund firing that thing up again. When you do that, you attract a confluence of interested parties in the water. And so there's water now that's going to the Cienega in the Republic of Mexico, and it's coming out of ag return flow, and it's feeding the Cienega. And in these minutes entries between the United States and Mexico, we have certain obligations to keep that water going. We have people who would love to run that desal plant, say that Yuma, you should take that water, and then maybe the CAP could take more water out of its canal. And so that's a very lively conversation, as you might imagine, between Yuma farmers and the Central Arizona Project. They had a very big, long presentation last fall about that issue. So yes, the Yuma desalting plant is there. It's expensive. And when you start talking about running it, then the question is who gets the water? Could we have better technology? Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, I certainly hope so, because we're going to need to figure out desal in the coming 100 years.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Lingenfelder.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Thank you, Patrick. I want to just share a little bit more information on my idea, my letter that I sent out recently, and it's related both to the proposed GSC farms transfer east to Queen Creek and also the ongoing Hualapai settlement as well. Obviously, everybody here, I think, would agree that the best interests of our Colorado River communities would be to kill that transfer that GSC Farm is proposing outright. However, as everybody knows, the director of ADWR has already given the green light to transfer that water. So that got me to thinking, if the proposed GSC Farm transfer cannot be defeated outright, the next best alternative solution and strategy for the Colorado River communities is to keep the water on the river as simply another north-south transfer along the river. And there's been several north-south transfers along the river. So that's stays with precedent, correct? Rather than, for the first time ever, transferring it east to Queen Creek. And on some of the webinars and things that I've sat in on over the last 6 months, there are other cities in central Arizona that are looking at this as a possible model for their own deal. That's something that we need to pay attention to. So, I've read and studied the documentation existing right now for both the Hualapai settlement and the transfer that's been proposed. And if we propose to send that water north to the tribe instead of east, there's several benefits to that, and I'll just name a few of those. So, as most of you know, I believe it's public record from some of Dr. Clark's writings, the tribe requires 4,000 acre-feet of Colorado River water to grow their significant economic development interests at Grand Canyon West and the Skywalk, and at their population center of Peach Springs. The Hualapai Tribe's reservation borders the Colorado River, and the tribe's efforts with drilling wells for additional groundwater supply have proven largely unsuccessful so far. In the priority hierarchy, the Department of Interior's obligation to the Hualapai Tribe trumps Queen Creek's interest in this water from Cibola. So there is a case that if there's a water available, it should go to the tribe first and not Queen Creek. A transfer north, I think, would be a win for Colorado River communities from Yuma all the way up, as the water would remain on the Colorado River and would not get transferred east for the first time. We don't, as I said before, we don't want that to serve as a model for other central Arizona cities in the future. Something that Queen Creek's attorneys keep mentioning and bringing up is the economic value of this water is far greater to build 5,500 homes in the town of Queen Creek than it's producing right now. So, to counter that argument, I believe that economic value of this water to the Hualapai tribe would be far greater than the cited $307 million in economic value estimated to Queen Creek to build those 5,500 homes. I think that if you look at the fact that they were over 1 million visitors a year and they're still building out there, you could do some in-plan economic and fiscal impact modeling to show that the economic impact of that water, that same water, would be far greater than $307 million. That's something to just keep in mind as we go down the road here. Over the 6 years ago, when the first part of the Hualapai settlement was passed, CAP was not bracing for imminent restrictions as they are now. The official shortage declaration, I believe, is anticipated in August of 21, if I'm not mistaken, Patrick.
That's correct. It's announced in August and it goes into effect on
2022,
January.
Correct?
Yep.
So if GSC farm water were to be transferred north to the Hualapai tribe, it would, in essence, free up an additional 2,088 acre-feet of CAP allocation for use by Central Arizona users. That's a positive for us. The benefits, it benefits the Department of Interior to send that water north to the tribe, as it completely obviates any requirement for an EIS to be conducted. And last but not least, by keeping the water on the Colorado River, in this instance, it allows additional time for Cobb's fourth priority water bill to be passed, preventing future fourth priority water transfers attempts in the east and other future legislative efforts. Thank you.
Yeah. Nothing else. The only thing I would like to see is, I don't know what the rest of the board members would be kept apprised of the communications Mr. Cunningham's talking about. It seems like 3 of us aren't on the list. Maybe they could be disseminated through the manager, through the rest of us, if board members are interested in it.
Yeah, let's clarify that now. I know that in the past, being on the board a couple of times, I've forwarded things directly to board members, and I get in trouble. So I'm going to just start to send everything to Sam, which I believe Sam has been copied on a lot of the stuff, and I'm just going to ask him that any updates we get, that we support that and give that to the full board if we could. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. All right, we'll take a short 10-minute break, come back at 11:33.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one question of Patrick before we take a break?
Sure. Mr. Cunningham, get back
So
up there.
close to being away.
You're
so
almost
close.
gone.
So close, but there's a lot of conversation about the Hualapai aquifer and transfer of water from the Colorado River to central Arizona. But In my area, a lot of my constituents are asking the question, what about Golden Valley and the Sacramento Aquifer? Because we never talk about that. So could you just real briefly kind of touch on that so that the people that are using the Sacramento will kind of get an idea as to why it's not real critical at this point?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, I'd be delighted to do that. The Sacramento Valley Aquifer Basin is in much better shape. And the Matrix study also studied the Sacramento Aquifer, and it's in three subparts: the chloride, Golden Valley, and Dutch Flat. Dutch Flat is down by Yucca. The Golden Valley obviously is nearer Kingman, and chloride is the northern part of that. Their assessment in the Matrix study was that those folks in Golden Valley and Dutch Flat have plenty of water until the year 2198. Not 2098, 2198. And so that is rock solid. The chloride likewise has very, very strong water in that basin, not as strong as the Golden Valley and Dutch Flat, but nonetheless they've got good water. So between the two, the Sacramento and the Hualapai, Sacramento is much stronger and in much better shape. That the folks near chloride will be doing some long-term planning on that, but the basin itself is in really good shape in the Sacramento Valley Basin.
Okay, so if nothing else, this report brings good news for the Sacramento Aquifer users.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, absolutely right.
Thank you very much, Patrick. You're always a wealth of information, and I believe this will be available, your testimony on video, and it'll be transcribed in our minutes if anybody wants to get a copy and digest all this information once again, because it's very, very complex.
Mr. Cunningham, previously when we did a study of the Sacramento Aquifer, we were losing about 6,000 to 8,000 acre feet a year overflow of the aquifer that was going to the Colorado River. Is that still continuing, or are we mining water in Sacramento now?
Mr. Chairman, members, no, you're right. We still lose water to the Colorado River. The USGS study most recent study talked a little bit about that, but probably the more reliable study is way back in 2012. I don't know that it's the 6,000 acre feet. I just don't remember the exact number. But I could take a look at that and see if I can find that.
But that's fine. As long as we got overflow, that means we have more water than we need in the aquifer.
It is currently overflowing, which as you drive down Santa Maria and you get closer to Topak, it does seem counterintuitive. But yes, deep under the ground, the water is flowing.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a break till 11:37.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll start the meeting again. Item number 38, we have a couple of people signed up. Stephen Robinson.
Supervisors, Chairman, I'm Steve Robinson out of Golden Valley. I oppose the proposed budget, specifically the tax increase for quarter-cent sales tax. Let me list the reasons. In 2015, we produced a fund balance policy, the first one in county history. In that budget, they said the ideal amount of cash reserves for the general fund was about 25%. AAA rated counties had that level. At that point, we had 16%. And in fact, in 2014, our cash reserves was $12.7 million on a $72 million expenditure. By 2019, 5 years later, revenues were up $14 million, expenditures were up $12 million, but the cash fund balance went up to $35 million, nearly triple what it was 5 years earlier. In 2020, the audit showed that our revenues went up to almost $97 million, and expenditures went up to $85 million. And without the $4.6 million in COVID money, we were at $41 million in the cash fund balance. Now, going back to that ideal fund statement balance, the General Finance Officers Association put in their footnotes in their 2009 report, however, governments with much larger governments can have substantially less in their fund balance because they have a very stable flow of income. I've looked back over the last 20 years of financial statements for the county. At the most, only once, maybe twice, did the actual revenues go down and expenditures stagnate. But we've gone up almost 25%, and yet our fund balance has gone up dramatically. I looked at what you propose for this sales tax. If we're going to be about 47 to 50 million general fund balance the fiscal year that ends, and it shows almost 52 million in the general fund accounts, you could pay for all $29.5 million of your proposals for that sales tax without a tax increase and still leave close to $20 million in the official general fund. On top of that, you have internal service funds, which are really general fund accounts. They just transfer money from one fund to another to pay for cars, insurance, and things like that. There's over $20 million in those funds. That's over about 100% of your insurance revenue or insurance expense for health insurance is in the fund. 5 years worth of automobiles is in that fund. And my point is, you have so much cash, and the problem is you're overtaxing the people to pay for more spending when you could use the money that you have in the accounts. Another thing I noticed in just this last May 31st report, that even though you stopped collecting excise tax on the sales tax, that 0.25%, it shows $14 million in the excise tax fund. Unless we haven't paid a bunch of the bills for the new courthouse, I'm wondering where that money, why there's so much money in the excise account. So long and short, you could easily pay for all the expenditures for capital improvements out of the existing general fund cash reserve balance without a tax increase. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Scotty McClure?
Scotty from Bullhead. Hildy, is this where you had that meeting there at the library about the lower property tax and the quarter-cent sales tax increase? So this is the time for me to come here and gripe. Wasn't sure. Didn't we just get rid of a sales tax, retire one? Just recently, it went away. You guys, yeah, okay. Now here we are. You're doing the California gig here. The Jerry Brown the Clown, the shell game. Here's the tax again. And it's only for 5 years, and you're going to promise us again this tax is going to go away. I don't know where in the heck this person is coming from to do their shell game. Taking the property tax and giving all the rich people, all the people that own $1 million homes, and shoving it down to us. Now, since are all the landlords out there that are renting apartments, are they going to be required to take that percentage and lower my storage unit fee? It went up last year $5. It's the point of it. It's because their taxes went up. But are the landlords going to give all the renters out there, be required, you give them $10 off, or is it going to go to the renters? I don't see that in the language here. Only people that are going to get a tax break are the people that live in $1 million homes. And I'm going to end up paying quarter-cent sales tax on everything that I buy, from a Reese's peanut butter cup, $1.75 upstairs. I've never paid more than $1 for a candy bar before, but I was hungry, so. But yeah, this is, and I'm not real impressed with where this sales tax is going to go to either. The sheriff's department need no more money. They need to come up here and tell us. It's just an automatic thing to the mortuary, the morgue, or whatever. I've never been there. I don't know what. Like I told Hildy, I said, I'm only going to use it once. I want to pay as I go. I was just being facetious. If they need a new building, we'll let them come up here and we'll find them some money or something. I hope I only have to use it once. But I'm not real impressed. If the sheriff needs another deputy or something, just don't give it to them. And I think you have to do a 5-0, 5 out of 5 vote on that. And is that going to be voted on during the budget or today? Or I'm not sure how this works. But yeah, I want my storage unit knocked down $5 if they get a break.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Lloyd, do you have anything to tell us?
Good morning, Chairman Johnson and Supervisors. The budget that is prepared and presented to you today is quite similar to the budget that we discussed during the budget workshop. There are a few changes that were included within the package itself, where we had purchase order rollovers and items like that that affected what was proposed to where you're at today. In addition, let me just mention a few more items that would be rolled into the tentative budget that were not included in your packet that have happened since the day that we turned that in to the board. And today, we would need to adjust the court automation fund by moving $40,000 up into their capital line from their contingency. So the net effect is 0, but it would be moving a line item. That item would be for the redesign of their public-facing website that they need to complete next year. And then we have one more PO rollover that's been added by the probation department for carrying over their software purchase order. The other 3 items are all items that were approved by the board. The first one was approved on June 7th, and it was the Continuum of Care program. So we need to add $232,000 both in revenue and expense for that grant that was approved at the last meeting. And then today, 2 items were approved. One in community services for the emergency housing voucher program. That would be an increase of $283,000, both revenue and expense. And then the vaccination supplemental fund that was approved on item number 16 today for the public health department. That would include both revenue and expense of $706,000. So with that, I turn it back over to the board for additional discussion, and we will try to answer any questions that you may have.
This budget that you have in front of you is predicated on a quarter-cent sales tax?
Yes, sir.
So I would guess we would need a motion and vote if we have a quarter-cent sales tax before we discuss anything.
If I may address that, Chairman.
Jump right in, Mr. Asplin.
So today is just deciding whether to approve the preliminary budget. It is not approving the quarter-cent sales tax. As with any preliminary budget, it is subject to change or modification later on when you do the final budget. So if you were to vote today to approve the preliminary budget, you would not be approving the quarter-cent sales tax. But then when you come time to approve the final budget, at least my recommendation, and I haven't talked through this, but I'm just going through just thinking logistically, I would recommend voting on the quarter-cent sales tax first. And if that's approved, then you go in and vote on the, well, approved or not approved, whatever it happens, then you go in to decide the final budget. At that point, you'll know whether the quarter-cent sales tax has been approved or not.
Okay, we can delay it. Do you have any discussion on the tentative budget? Supervisor Angus.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Okay, I do have some questions, and I took it from the presentation, and if you remember, I wasn't here, I was on the telephone, so it took me a couple of weeks to really kind of look at it, because like I said that day, this is the biggest budget ask since I've been supervisor. And that's not a good thing, I don't think, so I really went over all of this. And they might sound like small things, but they were kind of big things to me, or things I just needed some clarity on. So to start with, new initiatives, the division of the courts. They want to add 5 bailiff positions and reclassify the court security assistant position from 5 to 10. And so it's all security. So what I want to know is if, didn't we hear that they were going to be doing many more video trials or whatever they do? I mean, I thought that would mean there'd be less need for these things instead of more.
So if I may, I would prefer to hand your question back off to the judge or the representative. Kip was here, I believe.
You want to swear him in first, Supervisor Angus, before you talk?
Good morning, Chairman Johnston, Supervisor Angus. Yes, we have been trying to focus on more appearances by video, more hearings by video, telephonic by video. But when we get to the trial portion, most often they want to be in person. The attorneys want to be there in person. The defendants, those that want to be there, want to be in person. Judges prefer in-person hearings for those types of things. We do have a pilot project going for civil cases, a civil trial process, all remote, and we're working that through Judge Jansen. And that would help, but that's on the civil side, and we typically don't have the bailiffs there anyway. It's the criminal side where we always need to have bailiffs there. They need to manage the jurors. They need to be there, just to help have a presence for security. And so we haven't gone very far down that road. We're the only, and I always hate to say this, we're the only one. We've never had full-time bailiffs in our court, and we feel the need to have that. It's getting harder to find part-time bailiffs, and would certainly provide a lot more continuity and security for us with full-time bailiffs. So that's why we've got that in there. We understand it's a big ask. That didn't come across very well. it's a lot, and we certainly could look at modifying that slightly if we need to, but it is a need, and unfortunately, the in-person is still important for us, and especially on the criminal side.
And one of the reasons, because we have an inordinate amount of jury trials.
We
like
do.
Probably what I've heard is the second most next to Maricopa.
Yeah.
I mean, even more than Maricopa.
No, not more than Maricopa, but we have a lot. We've had 45 so far since January to today. 45. We've had 2 grand juries sworn in. I know the county attorney's office probably going to see filings starting to creep back up again, but we do have a lot.
Well, maybe it's some other time we can talk about that and why that is here. Because it is a little disconcerting when so much of our budget goes to the courts. You know, just never ends.
Right.
Always more.
And we are trying to manage it, and we have done a lot with our remote and in person to reduce that. But again, on the criminal jury trials, there's still a big need there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Economic Development new initiative. And this is to transfer 25% of new construction property tax to Economic Development Enterprise Fund. So where would this money have gone ordinarily? Where is it being taken from to go into this fund?
So with that concept, it is coming from new construction. The property tax is coming on as new construction for the very first time. So it would, for the next year, that's about $800,000. It would segregate out then 25% of that and move it over into that revolving fund, so to speak.
But ordinarily, it would all go into the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, so 25%, I don't know if I'm keen on that. Okay. Next up, community services. How much is county funded versus grant funded with community services?
Okay, so community services, I believe that we spend with general fund monies about $400,000, $400,000 to $500,000. The entire balance is with grant funds.
With grant funds. I just wanted that on the record.
Okay.
So Public Works is asking for 10 new vehicles, one of which is going to community services. So do we pay for that, or does the grants pay for that?
The grants generally will pay a use fee for that. I don't recall if there's one that's specifically assigned to their administration. No. So it should be grants. The answer to that should be the grant funding. Well, let me stand corrected. Primarily grant funding. I do know that there's a bit of that we pay for senior services that is paid out of the general fund. So senior services do have vehicles that they use for the Meals for Wheels particularly, and those are general funded by and large.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. For Public Works parks, community parks, and then I want to talk about Davis Camp. I've been talking to Sam about this, our county manager. We have a huge need for more help for our park rangers at Davis Camp. And then I want to talk about law enforcement on the water there. I honestly wasn't really aware that we did not have a boat on the river there. I spoke to the sheriff. It's time. We need to do that, whatever it takes. We need to get a boat and a presence down there. Right now, Bullhead City responds to all the calls at our park. Last year, there were 240 of them. They do not ask us for anything back. I don't think that's fair. What? Who just said something? Okay. So we need to talk about that. More help on the Colorado River down by Davis Camp. Okay, the television district. It says 150 for a new site in Lake Havasu to expand coverage. Why Havasu?
I can answer that. The Havasu, we have a blind spot there where a lot of the people don't get the service. So if they put this tower up, then it can reach in. But they also have to pay for the TV tax. So they've been irate about it.
It'll be interesting now that there's a whole new model out there. Everyone's streaming. Even if you're using the television district for your TV signal, you probably have the internet. Most people do at this time. It's almost like a utility, right? We're talking about things like utilities. So at some point, and I feel like it's 10 years ago, I think we need to kind of do a survey about really, again, how much this is used. You know how I think Supervisor Gould and I feel about this, but you know, it's still kind of a small, but everything adds up. And then on that next page, the building construction funds, $2.5 million for the animal shelter. So is that from the last budget, or is this in addition to?
That is from the last budget, just carried over.
Just carried over, okay. And there's more, but it's kind of some small stuff. But until all these kind of smaller things are being addressed, you know, I don't think I can vote. But again, it's probably all things that would be taken down. But last but not least is all the raises. I'm uncomfortable with all of that. Last year, we gave substantial raises. We did. And I was the deciding vote on that budget. There were 2 supervisors who voted against that budget, I believe, for that reason. I said next year it's going to be different. You know, my concern is there's so much uncertainty out there. The state hasn't done their budget. We keep hearing they're going to drop tax rates, things that are going to affect us, things that we don't know now. This is an ongoing cost. You know, when I first started here and we start talking about how people are compensated, I'm always for people compensated by their worth, like the private sector. And so we kind of gave a little, but I think it was taken advantage of. And so now I think now we're at a point here where we're in trouble, and that's maybe why we can't get people. And so either we go, I think we have to go either way, black and white. We either have to go to a system where we're at will, and we can do this, we talked about it, we're at will and people are compensated for their worth and their merit, or we go back and we do a classification study like I know some supervisors want. It's taken me this long to realize that it can't be both. It has to be one or the other. And every year we go through this, and there's bad feelings, bad morale, certain people getting it all the time, certain departments getting it all the time. And, you know, we hear people are whispering in our ears that they're not happy with it. So I think what would be wise maybe this year, until we see what happens next year with the economy, is to invest some money and do that classification study, even hire an outside firm, do it right. And then when people go out, everybody can look and see exactly what they'll be making and what their increases will be. And there'll be some more certainty on our part from year to year, because I can't see this happening every year. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. To echo Supervisor Angus's point on the merit increases that are proposed, things like this. You know, I know that last year a lot of people were laid off and unemployed. Some are still unemployed. I personally think it's just bad timing to be giving raises when there's so much private sector hardship out there. And then also I want to make a point, because I was also unable to be here in person, that up on the Arizona Strip, you know, in the last 6 months, over 80% of the complaints that I'm getting in my district come from Beaver Dam, Littlefield, Scenic, and the Strip, and they don't feel supported in land use issues. I get a lot of reports about land splits that are happening, people building things that the county may not know about, and also law enforcement too. And I know that Sheriff Schuster is working closely with us to see what we can do about response time. If somebody calls, we want to make sure that we get a unit up there on scene, especially those incidents where there's something that is a threat to life safety. And I think we'll get there, but I'd like to see some support up on the Strip in those areas.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have a hard time voting for a budget that has a tax hike built into it. The plan for this sales tax increase is really a tax increase. And I've seen these things come across as ideas before, and I kind of like to call them the wimpy tax cut. Popeye had a friend. Many of you might be familiar with the Popeye cartoon strip. Poppy had a friend named Wimpy. Wimpy liked to eat hamburgers. Apparently, Wimpy never had any money. So what Wimpy's little thing that he would say was, if you give me a hamburger today, I will surely pay you on Tuesday. Well, with this plan for a sales tax increase we have to create a sales tax, there's no benefit to the taxpayer until the 4th year. So we're going to collect another $8 million from this sales tax each and every year until the 4th year, where we get the promise of politicians that they're going to reduce the property tax at that time. I'm not impressed by the promises of politicians. I've been around for over 20 years and had politicians make promises to me that were never carried through. Since we cannot come up with a way that would lock this in stone and make an increase in the sales tax be reduced from the property tax, I can't support this kind of stuff. So I can't support a budget that's built on this premise. Since this is unanimous, it's not going to go anywhere because I'm not going to vote for it. I've never voted for a tax increase in my life. This is a bad time for a tax increase. It's a bad time for a pay raise. Folks in the private sector are hurting. It shouldn't be government first. We should make sure that we take care of the folks that actually hired us and that we work for, rather than taking care of ourselves. But with that, thank you.
Anyone else?
May I say one more thing? About the sales tax, we did have town halls, a couple of them down in Bullhead. When I throw a town hall, the people who come are usually Republicans, conservatives, my people, right? And we gave them the whole thing, the whole lay of the land, good, the bad, and the ugly. And people understand it. They understand about spreading it around, that everyone has skin in the game. We take advantage. We are a tourist community. People pay into it. They're using our infrastructure and our resources, but they're not paying. Everyone understands that. There is even people in Mojave Valley who live on Indian land who don't pay property tax to us. So there's a lot of different things. We're a very unique county. And one of the reasons we're unique is because our taxes are relatively low. But I was having a hard time, and you know that. I still hadn't made up my mind, but people do understand it. But the only way I could support it, it looks like it's a moot point, but the only way I could support it is if there was something that the taxpayers, the property tax people see quicker. Then, it's going to be more than 4 years because they're not going to see anything for 2 years, and then their values are going up. So in reality, and let's be honest, you're not going to see your taxes going down. They may remain the same or go up a little, but they're not going to go down because your values are going up. Things are happening down at the state. You may see your income tax go down. I think that's a good thing at the state level. But with everything out there, the economy being unsure, we really would have to tighten a lot of this up and address some of these things in the budget, because we can't keep spending like that and not know what's going to happen in the future. And like Supervisor Gould says, politicians, we are politicians, right? That's our job, is to do this. So I'm not responsible for what another board does. I can't make my decisions today based on what a board, in 5 years may do. I'm going to do what's good, what I believe is good today for the county. And I think we need to just be a little bit more reserved and have a little bit more discretion in our spending before we can do anything like ask for more money from the people.
Chairman Johnson, if I may,
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Just say a couple more things. And I also held a town hall here. District 4 Supervisor Bishop sat in on that with her constituents as well. I think that there are some positives that come out of the sales tax portion. For myself, I'm against the recreational marijuana thing. I don't like that it passed, but I think that since it's passed, that Mojave County should be finding a way to tax that, to pick up some of the tax burden of our citizens. If you ever try to go to the grocery store on the weekend in Lake Havasu or Bullhead, our county is swarmed by Southern Californians and others that come here to use our natural resources, and I think that they should be paying their fair share too. How we do that, sales tax or some other means, that needs to occur, especially if it allows us to reduce the burden on the people that actually live here full time and call it home. Something else that nobody has really mentioned is Mojave County needs jobs. We need more high-level employment, and one of the benefactors is in economic development. Some of the business property taxes are going to go down. Maybe not by a tremendous amount, but it's still something. And anything that makes Mojave County a more competitive place to do business, I think that that's a positive thing to support as well. I think that we have to do what we need to do, anything that we can do with as far as the permitting processes, entitlement processes, low tax environment, to build a strong private sector business base, because that's really, if the private sector does well, then the county will do well. So I agree. Someone said it shouldn't be, public sector first or the county first. It should be our private sector first. I agree with that. So I think that is an effect of the sales tax component as well, by being able to reduce the property tax. But I agree that for my first county budget, this seems like an awful big chunk, an awful big, a lot of asks. So.
I guess the only thing I would throw in is disagreeing some with the board members is the county manager brought up earlier about our personnel. Lake Havasu right now, looking at their webpage today, lowest job offer is $20 except for a part-time clerk at the aquatic center. All of us go out and we see that McDonald's and those places are now offering health care and paying off student loans. While you want to keep your taxes as low as possible, I think that the public expects a level of competence from us, and I think if we don't keep up our wages and bring them in line with everyone else, our service is going to go down, and we could get to a level where we might be now with the numbers that the manager's putting out, where it's going to be hard to recover from. But that's all I had. Do we have a motion to...
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you, just a really quick thought.
I'd like to make a comment too.
Perhaps. I guess I would like to point out that as far as growth is concerned, our biggest growth areas are areas that we have little or no control over as far as government is concerned. When it comes to projects, we ensure that projects are funded before we proceed. And if we need to defer, we defer projects. When it comes to services, there is no deferring of services. And you all are very familiar with those areas where we have little or no control over the cost growth. So I just wanted to offer that as a reminder to the fact that we wanted to bring to you a responsible budget plan that allowed you to consider all county residents and, in fact, non-residents that use our services. It's we did say in the various meetings and that we had with you as well as the town hall meetings that this may not be perfect, and I have not seen a perfect budget out there yet, but I think it goes a long way in balancing our revenue stream and giving the board the the confidence and the sustainable revenue stream that is not based on one-legged stool. So we will live with whatever the board approves for us. But you get to a point, and I think you see along the way our shortages and our challenges. We'll get to a point where it'll just be harder and harder to overcome obstacles. We thought long and hard and truly spent a lot of time and effort coming up with a budget that has key components in it that address the concerns and the preference that we heard from the board members. I'm truly surprised often as to the costs that come from various services that we, the county, provides that we just don't get to have any control over them. Yet we incur them, and we do what we need to do to cover them. I think ultimately we'll reach a point where it would be really harder to achieve that. And so to that end, and for whatever it's worth, I wanted to share those thoughts and perhaps remind the board members of something that you don't need to be reminded of. I think you're very savvy, and you've been at this and you understand it very well. I appreciate the opportunity to just throw a couple additional thoughts with you.
Johnson.
Supervisor Bishop.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I like the idea of the quarter-cent sales tax, and I was looking forward to lowering the property taxes as a result, but without unanimous support of the entire board, the quarter-cent sales tax seems like it's dead in the water. So I would suggest we just go forward with property tax rates remaining the same as they are, and then I guess as long as Supervisor Gold is not willing to compromise his record, we'll just go forward on. Thank you.
All right, what I need is looking for an approval of adoption of 2021-22 tentative budget with modifications, and set August 2nd, 21 as the date for the public hearing on the final budget and tax levies and truth in taxation. We can go down, we can't go up from this.
Chairman Johnson, if I may.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, sir. Coral, at this point, is there an opportunity to whittle back and scale back some of the requests that have been made, speaking to Supervisor Angus's request, and then also working with Supervisor Gould to make him confident in this, or is it too late for that type of stuff?
No, absolutely. This is the time and place.
For my part, I agree with both of the things that they said about this, too many requests, maybe paring that back a little bit, and then also, structuring it in a way that Supervisor Gould would be more comfortable, or be confident and comfortable with what we're doing. I think that's important. I could be convinced. The sales tax, I think, for the reasons that I stated, is important. And in the end of the game, if it benefits our businesses, expanding, attracting businesses, we're able to reduce the residents that live here full time and help their tax burden slightly. Hopefully that we could get to a place where we'd have something that everybody could live with.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sorry.
I just want to clarify the statement I made earlier about the procedure for the quarter-cent sales tax. So it cannot be passed today. The reason why it cannot be passed today is it's not on the agenda. Obviously, it's not an agendized item. But as looking at this and as we were discussing this, I was thinking about this. It does require a 60-day publication. Most likely it requires a 60-day publication. And I would recommend that we do that. There's some argument to suggest you don't need it, but I think you do. And so it does not look like you'll be able to impose the quarter-cent sales tax before the budget, because the budget meeting is going to take place, has to take place. What's the date?
Well, the way the budget's set now is we just have a maximum level. Any of these numbers inside.
I know. I'm
can
just
be
saying.
moved around.
Just so the supervisor is aware that we will not be able to set the quarter-cent sales tax. If you want to vote on it, the vote cannot take place before the budget meeting.
Well, this budget was presented to us with a quarter-cent sales tax included in it, and that's why I saw the resolution was there today, and now you're saying we can't do it, so.
If it were, could I clarify a little bit? If it were included within the budget and we went forward, and the final budget included presentation of a sales tax, then the resolution would be adopted for the sales tax. It wouldn't go into effect anyway until November 1st. So the resolution establishes a later imposition date. But that includes the 60 days plus the month that you're in.
Well, we have to do, the 60 days has to take place before the vote. You have to give 6 days before the board would vote.
Oh, I see. Okay. Then it would be even later.
Correct.
Right, because we have to go through DOR, and they have time, and all the businesses
Right.
have to know, and it's
Right.
a long process. But what we're doing right now is just going ahead with this, basically your top number, and then that can be adjusted at the next meeting, or at the August 2nd meeting, if you come to an agreement on saying we want this or that, or change.
It can go
Supervisor
down,
Angus,
but
you
it
have
can't
something?
go up.
Yeah, also, can you speak into the microphone? I have a hard time with, especially with the plexiglass, kind of hearing you.
Do that on purpose.
All right, I just want some clarity right now. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. What was funny? What did he say?
He said he did it on purpose.
Oh, okay. Just some clarity from Supervisor Gould. So your stand is you're not going to vote for any tax no matter what. It's not like we can say, like, my thing was I'm not against sales tax. I actually think it's a good idea if it would be something substantial that the property owners could see quicker than 4 years. And if there was it sounds like if you do the math, it would be a 4 or 5 year sunset for those specific things that we wanted to build with it, as it was a successful 20-year sales tax that we had. And it's just the nature of it that every time we want to do something different, we have to go back and vote on it. So it looks like, and it did sunset that particular one. And Supervisor Johnson was adamant because he promised his constituents back then that would sunset, and I respect that. That's great. So is that what I'm understanding, that no matter what, there's no negotiation for anything, or else, because we just won't waste time?
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the problem is I'm more than happy to replace the property tax with the sales tax. The rub is the fact that you can't guarantee that the sales tax will reduce the property tax. That's the rub.
Because of the
It's
way
merely left up to the promise of future politicians that they won't raise your property tax back up, because I've seen this happen. It happened in Lake Havasu City. They said, you know what? If we institute a sales tax, we can reduce your property tax. And then pretty soon you were at maximum property tax and maximum sales tax. And I don't want that to happen countywide. And that's what I keep telling staff, show me a way that you can lock this in stone so that the amount collected by the quarter-cent sales tax will reduce property tax, and it can't be done. They can't do it. The plan that's before you is not even that plan. The plan is an increased spending plan that raises $8 million a year in additional revenue that's taken out of the wallets of the citizens of Mojave County, or actually whoever's paying taxes in sales tax in Mojave County, to fund additional spending with the future promise of a reduction in property taxes. That's the plan before you today. It's an increased spending plan. It's not a swap the sales tax for property plan. If you read what the press is writing in there, that's the way they're playing it, is that you're swapping sales tax for property tax. That's not what's before us. What's before us is an increased spending plan. The question in the Kingman newspaper yesterday was, would you swap sales tax for property tax? That's not the question that's before us today. That's the rub. You can't figure out how to make sure that that additional $8 million is subtracted from the tax levy. That's the rub. That's the challenge that I gave to the staff. I never made a commitment that I would vote for this. I continued to say, come up with a way that you can guarantee to me that it won't be just a mere promise from politicians that that $8 million will be deducted from the property tax levy. I don't like property tax. I think property tax is one of the worst forms of taxation, and the founding fathers should have thrown it out. Because essentially, I have to pay tribute to the government for the privilege of owning property in a supposedly free country. So I'm more than happy, go to the state legislature, abolish property taxation, and move to sales tax. That was a way to fund government. I'm good with that. I just don't want maximum property tax and maximum sales tax, even though we're not at the maximum rate now. Because this is not the argument that's on the surface. It's a deeper argument. Most folks don't understand it. I don't know, at your town hall they might have understood it, but they also, I have a little more insight into it than the average voter does. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm going to make a comment or two, and I do so with the utmost respect to all board members. So please understand that before I say anything. So we did, Supervisor Gould was very direct and candid with us from the beginning. He shared those thoughts. We worked very closely with the county attorney's office and staff to develop a proposal or a resolution that would be necessary should the board adopt this quarter cent sales tax. And we developed it in such a way that would address, we thought would address those concerns and not bind future boards, which we understand we cannot do. So we were hoping, we did provide that to all of you. We were really looking forward to getting some feedback on that. I know everybody's been busy, and board members are no different. We did not receive feedback on that, so we were not sure if that had fallen short of meeting your needs and expectations, or if it was acceptable. But we did not really get feedback. We were hoping we would, but we understand those are real concerns. They're important, and we wanted to do everything we could and know how to address them. As far as the balancing between the property tax and the sales tax, I'm either misinformed or missed something. While I understand that the assessor's office assesses, starting in September, and it's a full year cycle before the assessment comes out, and then they pay in the following year, and that is a recognized delay. The plan is a 4-year plan that would be acted on by this board, and in God's willing, this board will be here for the 4th year's budget, and it would reduce the property tax by 36 cents to offset that sales tax, and those, based on the 20-year history that we had from the sales tax collections, those are, based on that record data, are equal. So there is, it is intended. We don't control the future, but it is intended to be equal and to lessen the burden on the property owners and allow tourists and visitors and larger purchases to contribute to it. It's again, it's diversifying, if I may use that term, our revenue stream to allow the board to govern effectively and efficiently as possible. I thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Any other discussions? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. What Supervisor Gould says does resonate with me. Is there a way, and you tell me if this would help or not, to either put a sunset on this of 4 years, or making it match up with our terms, our 4-year terms, or doing some sort of a supermajority requirement for future property tax increases, or something like that would more solidify that this board or any other board couldn't jack up everybody's property taxes and their total tax burden. I'm in favor of doing something like that. I think that's valid. And also, I think that, again, hopefully between now and when we adopt a final budget, that the request, the spending plan that Supervisor Gould has mentioned and Supervisor Angus has mentioned, that will be pared down a little bit, some of the asks.
While I enjoy seeing Supervisor Gould get beat up, I'm also a no on this, so I don't know if getting Supervisor Gould's gonna work or not.
If I could interject one other thing, Chairman.
Sure.
To answer Supervisor Lingenfelter's question, as well as Supervisor Gould, I helped draft, or I drafted the proposed resolution, and I researched the issue, and the problem that you have, and what you were asking for, is you cannot bind future boards. So we cannot pass something that to the effect that says, we passed the quarter-cent sales tax, and the future boards must always reduce the taxes year after year after year. We can't do that. What we can do, and this is the way that it was drafted, is there can be the sales tax can go away, or it would expire, or would it be repealed, whatever word you want to use, if future boards act in certain ways. So the way that it's crafted right now is it says the sales tax would go into effect, but if future boards increase the property tax, then it goes away, then it's repealed. Okay? What you could do to address what Supervisor Gould wants and what Supervisor Lingenfelter wants is you could say something to the effect of, if future boards do not reduce it by this amount in this year, and this amount in this year, and this amount in this year, then it goes away. So you could do something where you could craft it in that way, and it would address Supervisor Gould's concern, and I think it would also address Supervisor Lingenfelter's concern. You could do that. But if future boards do not act that way, then the sales tax would go away.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The problem is we're the folks that set the tax rate. We can't even come together to decide what is a tax increase. I've argued if you collect more money than you did the previous year, you've increased taxes. We had a presser go out that essentially rebutted my argument that came from the board last year. So if we can't agree on what a tax increase is, we're going to have a hard time agreeing on how much we're going to subtract from that number. Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson, if you don't, here in front of you, if you don't mind. Just thank you. To answer Supervisor Lingenfelter's question, the statutes right now require a unanimous vote of the board to increase the property tax by more than 15%.
Do you have any more questions, or we have a motion to send this forward? Not approving it, it's just sending it forward.
Chairman Johnson, do we have a choice? I mean, what are our options at this time?
Sit here all day.
What are our options? Like, if we send this forward, it's just the tentative budget, then you come back with some of the things that you've heard us say, for the final budget, or is there something in between? Because we have to have this done by the first meeting in August, right?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, if you send us forward, please give us some direction. It's really hard to come back to you and we have time between now and August when you're going to adopt this budget. But there are initiatives out there. Every department made a case for them during our budget meetings and hearing. And there are cost increases in various areas. We want to provide you, the board, with the information you need to make a conscientious, informed decision. But it's, and we try to anticipate your needs and priorities, and that's why I thought it would be helpful to you and to me and the staff to meet with you individually, and we did. So if you send us forth to come back to you with something, we'll be happy. We're here to serve you and work with you. But please give us some direction. If indeed this approach is an unacceptable one, we'll revamp it. But even with that, there are questions. Do we stay, if we fall back on the current model, which is primary property tax as the source of controlled revenue, and then grants and state share taxes, which we have no control over? If that's the model, then okay. But within the property tax, we can stay at the current level. We can drop down to the TNT, to the proposed rate, or we can go back up. We can do a lot of things. Whatever we do is going to be ink on paper until the board votes on it and approves it. So we can be, we can chase our tails, or I please understand. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Some direction would be really helpful, and we'll come back with whatever you feel that you can work with and live with.
Supervisor Angus.
Thanks, Sam. Part of this, I think, is a function of how we do this process. Other counties go line by line. They have budget weeks where they get together and they literally go line by line. I don't know, I'm not saying that we should do that, but from the workshop to this, there's got to be something more, because it's not fair to staff. We didn't really give you any direction except when you met us privately, and there were still questions outstanding. So maybe in the future, when we do this thing, we need to have a more, in-depth study of the budget so you can really hear what we're saying and then take it, because I do, and I'm sorry for that for you. It's your first budget, and I think that the staff worked very hard on this, and it's a shame that here we are, and we're really rudderless right now, except to tell go back. So again, the process would be to pass this today and then have you come back. We have to do something today. We cannot continue this or table it. We have to do something, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, that is my understanding. And if it helps, we will go and come back with at least two options. One of them would be keeping the primary property tax rate where it is today, and the other one would be going to the TNT rate. I think you agree, you could go to either option, you can go in between them, you can go higher or lower. Every option would be on the table, but I don't know how many options you'd like us to come back with. Those two seems to me would be a good place to start, or good boundaries, or however you want to see it.
If you recall, when we had the other hearing, I said you weren't going to get the sales tax, and I said, bring us back another budget. You'd have two budgets, one that would, just like you're saying now, one that says, here's the property tax, and we say it'll be set, just using this number, at $1.50, and we will have the same budget we had last year, because of cost of growth, or growth has gone up, so we got a little extra money. Or we raise it to $1.55 and we do these initiatives that have been asked for, and it's up to the board members if they want those different initiatives. But I asked for you to bring back two budgets, and it didn't appear that anybody did it, so. That's all I got. Is there a motion to go, or? Supervisor Bishop.
I'll make a stab at a motion. I make a motion that we approve the adoption of the tentative budget with modifications using the current model with property taxes remaining the same, as well as another with the TNT rate.
Do you have a second?
You know, I sure would hate to see Mojave County miss out on taxing recreational marijuana and things like that. I think that they really need to be paying their share. So I'll second it, and hopefully staff will work with the board members to come up with something. Thank you.
Motion is second.
Chairman Johnson, could we ask Supervisor Bishop to add setting the public hearing into her motion, please?
Yes, I declined to do that, so I will add that now to set the public hearing on the final budget and tax levy and truth in taxation if applicable.
That's okay with you, Supervisor Lingenfelter?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign?
No.
Motion carries. Last item is an executive session only. There's no need to come back for any action at the board, is there, Mr. Espen?
I don't anticipate there's going to be any board action.
Okay, so.
But we do need a motion to go into executive session.
Right, so just for the public, basically the meeting's over, the only thing we'll come back for is to say goodbye. All right, need a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion carried.